All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for the How to Get into Dental School panel. We have two amazing panelists here today, both Harsh and Ellen, folks on the site with incredible talent, some of our best coaches in the space. So excited to have both of them joining us. I know for many of you, this is kind of the beginning, hopefully, of your journey. I know that we're not like in the thick of applications season, so congrats on getting started early. Hopefully this is a great time to join. That this is our goal. The reason we're hosting it right now is we don't want you to be in a rush in the ultimate months. We want to help you prepare over time and be part of this journey with you. So Emma just dropped in the chat the sign up for Leland link. You're going to want to sign up. It's completely free to do so. You click on that link, you create an account. That's how you get access to more free events, more the recording from today's session we'll send out tomorrow, and really a ton of discounts and other opportunities. So if you didn't see Emma's message, scroll up a little. It's in there. Emma, if you don't mind dropping it one more time, that will be great. And let's go ahead and get started. All right. Ask questions in the chat. Be respectful and supportive to other applicants. I don't think that should be a problem here. This is mainly when we have like 500 people on the calls and there's people kind of talking over each other and whatnot. So less relevant here. And then finally, to my earlier point, sign up for Leland for free to get access to the recording. We will send it out tomorrow. All right, let's get started with welcome and introductions. My name is Erica. I am the head of experience at Leland. I work with all of our coaches as well as our broader community, and I run all of our event calendar. So all the free events that you see coming on through Leland, my team works on, and we're so happy to be able to bring you this expertise at an accessible price point, which is free, through these events, and hopefully take you to the next step by helping you find the right coaches to work with on a tailored one-on-one approach, and really get a feel for what you can get as part of being in the Leland community. You'll also see Emma. She runs our events with me here at Leland. She'll be dropping links throughout. So coach links, answering questions, and just overall working with me to make sure you all feel supported today. But the real stars of the show are our two incredible panelists, Harsh and Ellen. It was totally by coincidence that we have two Columbia affiliated people. I've never actually seen this on a dental school call. We have a ton of dental students from Harvard that usually are on our panels for some reason, a big pipeline there. So I have seen the double Harvard logo, but the Columbia is a real treat today, and excited to pass it over to them to introduce themselves. We'll go with Harsh and then Ellen to follow.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction. But yeah, hey guys, my name is Harsh. I'm a second-year dental student right now at Columbia. I've been with Leland for a few months now, and I've been mentoring students for quite some time. I helped out students in the last application cycle as well as this current application cycle. And I'm really, I really love doing this. I did a lot of research while I was kind of applying to dental schools. I applied to over 18 different dental schools, and then I was accepted to 16 of them. So definitely have a lot of experience with, the admissions process. And yeah, I'll hand it over to Ellen to introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, it's nice to kind of meet everyone here tonight. I'm looking forward to doing this program with Harsh. It is fun that we both have the Columbia background. I have been with Leland since last February, working with a big panel of clients doing mostly dental. My background, as you saw, was for 15 years. I was the director of admissions at Columbia Dental. I then moved on to be a dean in the post-bac program at Columbia University, and a dean in the pre-health program at Fordham University in the Bronx, where I actually built that program. So I have worked with traditional, non-traditional students, dental students, medical PA, you name it, but the bulk of my professional experience has certainly been with dental admissions. So very exciting to answer any questions that you all might have and potentially work with some of you moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much, both of you. Thank you for your time. Harsh is in like the thick of his second year. Ellen said that this is one of the most challenging of the year. So really grateful for him taking time out of his busy schedule. And obviously Ellen, with all the amazing coaching and talent that she has, to be here and share it with you is quite the treat. So thank you to both of us. Excited to learn from both of you this evening, and really hoping that everyone in this audience walks away excited to work with one of these coaches individually on their applications to make them stand out and get into your dream program. That's really the vision. That's why we start here tonight. Now we want to hear from y'all. We're almost at 100 people live, which is pretty exciting. Where are each of you dialing in from? Are you in school? If you want to type in where you want to go to dental school, we're also would love to hear that. But our goal is that we get to know you all a little bit better this evening. And thankfully, it's a pretty intimate sized chat and want to learn more about you and your goals. Awesome. Are these where cool? This is great. Future dentists. UCLA. Is that where you want to go, or you're currently at UCLA? Because I'm a Bruins fan. I'll tell you that much. This is great. Awesome. Okay, great audience. Lots of really prestigious universities and lots of awesome goals. So keep them coming. This is excellent. Many of you, I'm sure, are on an amazing path to becoming a dentist, and we're happy to get to know you to be part of that journey. All right, so if this is your first Leland event, we like to start these out by telling you who is Leland, why are we here, why are we hosting these events for free every month. We have 115 events planned for this quarter. So as you can imagine, we're really excited about the free events and how they help our community members. We are the one-stop shop to help you get into the most competitive careers and schools in the world. We do one-on-one coaching. We have live courses. We'll tell you more about that in the coming months. And then finally, we have tons of events, content, and community initiatives like this one to help you be on the right track towards your goals. And it's working. Building Leland, we have just been able to see the most amazing outcomes. This is a very small subset. I wish that we could have hundreds of more slides to show you all of the incredible people who have reached outcomes on the platform, but we want you to be next. That's why we do this. We want to be on your journey. We want to cheer you on. I think one important thing to note too is a lot of folks who join Leland and come to these events might feel like an underdog. Maybe they're worried that there's not a bright path ahead. They come on the platform, they get access to these resources, they work with amazing coaches like Ellen and Harsh, and they end up getting into their dream program. So anything's possible, and we want you to feel like when you join Leland, you get an entire army of incredible team members, coaches, community friends who are cheering you on and invested in your success. So that's really what we're here to do, and we're excited to have you along this journey. One thing to note is we can actually help you figure out if you want to work with a coach or you're not sure like the services, or if you want to, buy DAT tutoring, please put some time on our calendar. Our team at Leland has several folks who do like free consultations outside of your intro calls with coaches. You can have a free strategy call with a Leland team member. And then during those team member calls, we also give out exclusive deals and discounts. So if you're even considering thinking about working with a coach like Harsh or Ellen, definitely scan this QR code or look out for Emma's note she just dropped in the chat. That will be a really big opportunity for you to get special access to codes as well as support figuring out what you can work with a coach on. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the dental application, and then we're going to dive into the panel. Actually, I'm going to pass this one over to Ellen. Ellen, do you want to take this?
Yeah. All of these points could not be more salient. The most important one, I would say, and Harsh probably, because he got 16 out of 18 acceptances, did this, which is start your preparation early. It is critical that you control the application calendar. You can't control what questions are on the DAT, and you can't control what your interview is going to be, but you can control the timeline that you put forward to show schools that this is the most important thing that you are doing, right? So you start that prep early, you research the programs you'll be applying to, and I think we'll talk a little bit about that. Probably Harsh will talk about how he did that. You want to secure all these parts of your application. The DAT score entails making sure you're putting in the time and taking enough practice tests that you feel comfortable with that exam. Your letters of rec, these letters of rec are not personal references. If you go to a big university and you say, but my organic chemistry professor doesn't know who I am, they don't have to know who you are. They're writing about your performance in the class. So while you want to try and make sure that you go to office hours and you make that connection, this is not someone that you're expected to have had coffee with and, understand everything about their families, right? You just want to work very hard in the class, sit, as silly as it sounds, sit in the front of the class so they see your active listening and they know that you're someone who's engaged. And when it comes time for letters of recommendation, they're going to remember you. I would say the one thing that I absolutely love working with people on is the personal statement. It can be a complete nightmare-inducing blank piece of paper, but there are some really kind of easy ways to get going to pull out that authenticity in what you're doing. And I think it's imperative that people are authentic when they're writing their personal statement. That's what makes it special. Not that it's got an opening statement that no one's ever heard about and it grabs you so tight. It just has to be authentic. A lot of you have the same experiences that have brought you to this place. So it's okay if you want to be a dentist because you fell off the bike and knocked your teeth out when you were 7. I read that essay 7,000 times when I was doing dental admissions, but it's true, right? And it was a real reason why someone got interested in the field. And of course, secondary applications, although you never quite know what's on them, they are pretty readily available from past years. And it can be very easy to kind of understand what types of things are going to come up, particularly DEI initiatives and working with underserved populations, and prepare those answers before you've even submitted the application so that when those secondaries come in, you have a library of material you can work with to drop into the application.
Love it. Thanks for covering. Real experts here talking about the most important part. So take note. And I think this is a perfect segue to, all right, Ellen, you just wrote out all of like the things that need to be considered. And I know that we missed a bunch, like people do research and people are, yeah, there's a lot that goes into the process, but let's start with Harsh. What is your top tip for someone applying to dental school? I know this is a broad question. It's just supposed to kick things off, and then we'll obviously dive into the more specifics, and then we'll pass it over to you, Ellen, to bring us home.
Yeah, no, this is an excellent question. And it ranges, from every applicant. I think the best thing you can do for yourself is kind of strategize and plan early. Kind of like what Ellen was saying in the previous slide with the first point where you want to start early on. I think if you kind of have a general idea working with like a counselor or working with somebody that has experience with admissions, how the dental school application portal kind of works, it's always good to get started early. For example, I've worked with many students that did not really, they haven't really shadowed much in general dentistry. And, that's kind of imperative when it comes to applying to dental school because a lot of dental schools want to see you shadowing general dentists, just because that's kind of the degree that you're getting. So there's very, big components of that application that you can really start mastering early on. And I think that's why planning and kind of strategizing early is going to be my biggest tip. How about you, Ellen?
I think there is so much validity to that. And I think when people start to strategize and plan what they're going to do, they may be shocked to find out that they're not applying the year they think they're going to apply the next year, right? And that's okay because there's so much that goes into it. And you don't want to make the mistake of saying, well, I'm going to take Orgo over the summer and I'm going to take physics over the summer because then I can apply in X year. It's not about rushing through the preparation. It's about getting that strong foundation with academics, with clinical experience, and with extracurriculars. So you are putting forth a strong, well-rounded application. So starting to figure out what your timeline looks like, whether you're a first-year college student now or whether you think you're applying in 25, is imperative. And so I think out of everything, it all matters on a 10 on a scale of 10, but being prepared and thinking it all through, I think is probably the most important thing.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah, there's so much that goes into it. And I think it's not something you can throw together overnight. And especially even on the application, even though you might have spent the last 3 to 4 years preparing yourself in terms of shadowing or experience or research, there's also a lot of thought that goes into it as well. When Ellen was talking about the personal statement being authentic and like there is a lot of reflection that goes into that too. So not something you can sit down and write in one hour. Just based on what you think to be the strongest pitch of yourself. There's often, talking to people in your life and writing down everything that matters to you. So we'll talk a bit more about that, but I think both of your points are extremely relevant in helping people get started. All right. I'm going to give this one to you, Harsh. You just applied to school pretty recently. What is the ideal timeline to prepare? And also this also piggybacks right off your start early. So now that we have them captivated early, what should be going on?
Yeah, so I'll kind of describe my timeline of how I kind of planned out my dental school applications. So the summer after my sophomore year, I took my DAT. And just because I had that summer off and I was fresh off of finishing organic chemistry. And then the semester after that, which was my junior year first semester, that's kind of where I started thinking about like, oh, like dental schools, like where I kind of want to go, what I kind of need to do for dental schools. Um, but I really think the second semester of your junior year, which is the right before you apply, is going to be the best time to kind of start preparing your application. In January, I started writing my like a very rough draft for my personal statement. And then I reached out to some professors to ask for letters of recommendation. And that's one thing that I will suggest to everybody. When it comes to letters of recommendation, especially if you're at a really large school, make sure you ask really early on and make sure you have good letter writers. So when you're kind of asking for letters of recommendation, you want to word it in a way where you're asking like, would you be able to write a positive letter of reference for me? So that way, you know, the professor also knows like, oh, the student, you know, is engaging and asking me if I know them well. So I think January is the best time to kind of start preparing everything. I know once March, April timeline came in, I started kind of compiling my resume, kind of like thinking about what I've done throughout my undergrad, you know, just kind of rehashing all my experiences. And then when May came around, the application actually opened up. So the way the AdSAS portal kind of works is that the application opens up in the middle of May, and then you get 2 to 3 weeks to fill it out. But you don't actually submit it until June 1st or sometime in that first week of June. It varies every year. But basically you have like kind of that 2 to 3 week buffer window where you can just fill out the application. And here, another thing to note is some schools also release their, I guess, secondary essays in their primary application. So you also have time to work on additional essays other than the personal statement in that time period. So kind of just to sum up what I was just saying, ideal timeline, I would say 2 to 3 months before applying, start compiling all of your resources, what you've done. Make sure you ask your letters of writers early on. And then, you know, really spend that time period before applications to prepare. And, you know, you don't have to be early. Early is ideal, but you don't have to be early to kind of prepare. Sorry, I know that was quite long, but I'll hand it over
No,
to
that's
Helen.
awesome.
Anything to add?
Ellen, anything you'd add there?
Yeah, it can be helpful, especially when you're still an undergrad, to think about it just as another course. You just start in the spring semester getting ready for it, right? There's going to be DAT review. I love that Harsh took the exam after his sophomore year. A lot of people might be putting the pieces together there. Likely he had already taken bio, gen, chem, and orgo and didn't need to take physics before the DAT because physics is not on the DAT. The DAT score lasts for 3 years. So if you know what your application year is going to be, you could kind of work that out in an appropriate way for yourself. But take that spring semester before whenever you're applying, and make sure that's when you're starting to put things together. One thing that bums me out for applicants is that there are now those secondary applications built into the AdSAS application, the secondary essays. It did not used to be that way, so it makes the AdSAS that much more laborious and complicated. But in the end, it works in your favor, but it's a lot to prep for.
Thanks so much. All right. Okay, so that was great in terms of like painting the picture. I feel like both of those questions kind of painted the picture of what it looks like. And now we'll dive into the more specifics of the application and hopefully go into a ton of tactical information there. Ellen, I'm going to pass this one to you. I think with dental school, it's interesting because obviously they accept a ton of people right out of school. There's also people who do it later on in their career. I have a coach on Leland who was in the fashion world. She did design and then she became a dentist. So it's obviously open for all, but I'm curious if someone on this call is kind of wondering, like, I want to go to dental school. Maybe I'm in my senior year and I don't feel like the strongest candidate. How do you think about advising your clients on gap years or additional schooling to make them stand out throughout the process and feel like they have a little bit more to speak to in their applications?
A lot of people might not be familiar exactly with what a postbac is. It stands for post-baccalaureate. It's taking additional coursework after you've earned your bachelor's degree. That is a fantastic way to improve the metrics when you're going in, right? A lot of people say to me, well, my grades aren't that strong, but I have all this great volunteer clinical experience or leadership. At the end of the day, you need some strong grades, right? And schools will look at your more recent grades. If you struggled in first and second year of college, and then you were on an upward trend, 2 semesters of that upward trend after your junior year is not going to be enough to prove to schools that you have what it takes. So if you end up kind of saying, well, let me go do a year of additional coursework that I might have gotten in a biology major, but I didn't get a chance to take, that's a breakout line on your ADSES application. So they see the most recent coursework and how well you've done. That can be a great way to not only improve your GPA, but prove to schools that you're serious about this. That's resilience and dedication to what you want to do. And even taking a gap year, maybe to finish some research that you're doing or work. Or I've had students who got an MPH or got a master's in divinity or got an MPA. If there's anything you want to do, complete that so that when you apply, you can say to schools, hey, blowing my own horn a little bit, look at this cool stuff that I did. A non-traditional applicant to an admissions committee is perfect, right? Because I know you're going to be a maturing factor on my class. You don't have to be everyone's babysitter, just the way that you carry yourself. You're a few years older and you understand how to get through and complete something that might be a challenge, and that's going to be a positive influence. So if you're thinking about taking more time, absolutely do. There's no downside to that.
That's awesome. Thanks for explaining. Harsh, anything you'd add, or maybe things you've seen as you've been running as a student admissions committee member and giving presentations to dental school hopefuls?
Yeah, so I've definitely seen a lot of students either taking a gap year or completing a post-bac. I think it's an excellent opportunity to not only take time and improve like your application overall, but also you get some time for yourself too. I know some of my friends have even like spent the year like working as a dental assistant and then also traveling. So you really get to kind of focus in on your hobbies, still, pursue your passions in dentistry, but kind of really build yourself up. And I know sometimes, research is another component that's kind of being more emphasized in applications. It's not necessary, but I know some students have been doing like research throughout their gap year. So it's definitely a good addition to kind of, improve your application and definitely get yourself prepped well for the next application cycle.
That's awesome. Thanks for contributing that. Okay, let's go to this one. So I feel like, okay, actually, I'm going to ask everyone in the chat right now, what is the most daunting part of the application? I'm going to guess most people say the DAT or, okay, interviews. Let's see, DAT. Keep them coming. We have 101 people here. So yeah, lots. I'm sorry. I hope I didn't, taint everyone to say that, but we've done this panel a bunch of times and everyone always talks about the DAT. And I know standardized tests are not a pleasant part of any admissions cycle, but there is a way forward and it's just something you have to check off. You have to perform well. And there are lots of systems, processes, and resources in place to help you do well. Harsh, having just gone through this, what advice do you have? And then Ellen, maybe from like a admissions committee member, how did you evaluate these data points on an application?
So I guess in my kind of perspective, when I've seen students apply with either lower DAT scores or lower GPAs, it's kind of like a balancing factor too. Like if you have one lower score and one higher score, like sometimes it balances out. But I think this very much ranges like school to school. I know there are some schools that kind of have limits. I know I had a mentor who told me that at one of their programs, they kind of had like a cap where, if your DAT or GPA didn't match some like minimum the school had, they just didn't review the application. But then there's other schools that kind of look at everything very holistically. So I would say if you have a lower DAT or GPA, definitely, keep working on building yourself up. Try to have different areas where, you have more strengths. I think it's definitely possible to still get in with a lower DAT and GPA, but it's very, very variable based off of schools. And I'm sure Ellen will have a much better understanding of this than me.
One thing to double click on before we pass it over to you, Ellen. Harsh, talk about your own DAT prep. What did you do? How'd you get the score that got you into Columbia? And maybe some advice for those who are telling us in the chat that they're scared of it. It's a daunting part for sure.
Yeah, no, the DAT is definitely the biggest struggle. And I think the biggest struggle comes in the fact that there's no right way to study for it for everybody. I know there's softwares out there, there's things that I will recommend, but everybody studies differently and every plan has to be personalized. So I think when you're studying for the DAT, you really need to be okay with the fact that you won't know, like every single detail of the exam. You kind of just have to plan really well. The way that I myself am a big like planner, so I like planning like every detail out. So I studied the sophomore year, the summer after my sophomore year. And what I did was I studied for around 2 months and 2 weeks. The first month I used DAT Bootcamp and did content review through that software. And then in the second month, I started doing additional prep using still DAT Bootcamp for its practice tests, but then I also got DAT Booster to have additional practice tests. I think doing both of these in conjunction with each other was a great like overview because they're very similar question styles, but they each have their niches, each of the programs. And for the practice test and like practice section review component, which was like the second half of my studying, I really created my own plan to kind of space out the different practice tests that I had. And I definitely recommend taking at least 4 to 5 full lengths just to, mentally prepare yourself for kind of the daunting, 4-hour, 45-minute DAT. So I know it can definitely seem like a lot. It is very mentally draining, but if you practice enough and if you kind of, go through and review what you're getting wrong, I really think it's doable. But the study time varies from person to person. I know there is people at my school that have studied for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, which is, crazy to me. But then there's also people that have studied 6 months to a year. So that range is very, very variable. So I think it's very personalized how you study for that DAT.
Awesome. Take it away, Ellen, from a AdCom perspective, because I see a question in the chat too about this.
Yeah, listen, if you have a lower GPA, you need to take time to fix that GPA, right? Because that's exactly what, Harsh, I told you to say hello to someone for me when I heard you were from Columbia. And every time I talk to someone about a low GPA, I hear that person saying, why are they applying this year? They should take another year, take more sciences, prove to us you can do it, right? No one's going to take your word for it. And that can sound harsh, but you have control over your GPA. You can go take some more classes, right? You can bring some more to the table and say, hey, I'd like to put a spotlight on kind of an upward trend in my grades. And with the DAT, I think the smartest thing Harsh said was take those practice exams, understand the flow of the test and what your pacing has to be, how much time you have to put into it. I work with students across all health professions, and the DAT, unlike the MCAT, is known to be a pretty straightforward exam. It's not tricky, it's long, but it's not meant to trip you up in any way. And so if you can really feel confident that your review is in place and you've done everything you can do, a lot of these exam prep companies are working with you on test taking skills, right? How you should, if you don't know an answer, what you should do, how you can rule out answers, and how you can kind of figure out, cut your choices in multiple choice down from 4 to 2. How it's smart to guess when you shouldn't guess and just move on. I mean, all of these skills are unfortunately kind of a little bit gaming the system, maybe not exactly showing what you know, but that is the system you're signing up for. You not only have the DAT, but you have the National Board Part 1 and Part 2. There's a lot of test taking in your future. So kind of put a lot of time into that and start to realize where your deficits are and how you can work on them. This might be another reason why people sometimes put off applying. One thing I will strongly stress is do not take that exam just to see how you'll do, because those exams, those official exams are out there. So you want to make sure that you take a practice exam for a a tester of how you feel about the DAT. Do not take an official exam because low scores will be averaged in, right? And that'll hold you back.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right, school selection. Harsh, I'm going to pass this one to you. How'd you think about applying? I know you mentioned that 16 number. I think, and Ellen, after we can hear from you when you help clients, but a lot of people want to cast that wide net. They know they want to go to dental school. They don't want to cut their chances, even if they do have a few top programs in mind. How do you approach this? How did you think about this? And then Ellen, maybe talk about the second part of this question, which is assessing the competitiveness.
Yeah, so I guess when I was initially applying, so a little bit about me, I went to Nova Southeastern University in Florida, so it's a relatively smaller undergrad. So I initially applied very, very broadly, thinking like, I don't know how much like the undergrad name matters for dental school applications, all of like, kind of second guessing myself. So I applied pretty broadly. And I ended up, doing well on interviews and stuff like that. And in terms of school selection, there was a few different criteria that I was kind of deciding between. So in the kind of end, I was deciding between 5 programs that were like my top choices. One of them was Michigan, UCSF, UNC, Penn, and then Columbia. And so I had 3 to 4 main criteria that I was looking at. One was pass-fail. Personally, I thought pass-fail was like my priority when applying to dental schools, just because I had heard really, really good things about like the culture and the nature behind, a pass-fail curriculum and how it breeds more of like a collaborative student body. And I totally see that at Columbia too. So that was my number 1 criteria when it came to school selection. I know cost was another big thing for me, but that kind of tied into my desire for specializing in the future. So my thought process was, if I wanted to go to a cheaper school, I would, I was okay with giving up the cost of the school if the chance for specializing was higher. And that was one thing that Columbia really, brought to itself in terms of its positive traits. Another big criteria for me was location. So I wanted to go to a location that was pretty diverse, had a lot of like, I'm a big foodie. So I wanted to go to a great like food scene, and New York is fantastic for that. If any of you guys are like on any social media, I know whenever I see like a restaurant anywhere on social media, I can find it in New York, because that's usually where most of these trends are coming from. And then the last criteria was kind of just having a support system. So here in New York, I have one of my cousins. She lives like right across the bridge in New Jersey. And so that was a really good support system for me. So those were kind of like the main criteria I had when selecting schools. And yeah, that's kind of how I approached my selection.
When you're applying, there's the ADEA official guide to dental schools, which you should all buy, that will walk you through what the school's prereqs are, right? So all of your pre-health advisors, pre-dental advisors have probably said for you to take, bio, gen chem, orgo, physics, but then you'll see this one requires biochem, but this one doesn't require biochem, right? So you want to get the guide to dental schools and see what all the prereqs are, and then they'll start talking about what their average GPA is, what their DAT scores are, the range, right? There's a range. So you have to understand if someone's average is 3.6, it doesn't mean that's the cutoff. You have to understand the language. That's the average of who they brought in. So that's where doing things outside the classroom and kind of bringing leadership and other non-cognitive indicators for success come into someone's GPA, maybe being a little bit lower, but schools liking to look at them. But you have to be honest with yourself, right? You have to be in the range of what schools are considering. Your 2.1 is probably not going to get you into dental school, but then we would go back to, you should do a post-bac. And then that writes your essay, why I was better as a post-bac than I was as a dental student. So there's ways for you to approach all of it, or pre-doctoral, excuse me, undergrad. God, I'm getting all my terms wrong. You know what I mean.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And just a plug, Emma, if you don't mind dropping in Harsh and Ellen's profiles, you can work with a coach on this. A lot of times, this is exactly where they get started, is helping you kind of evaluate, assess your competitiveness, assess areas that are areas of opportunity. For example, maybe if your top school is Columbia or Harvard, or, a top 15 school, you can work with a coach to come up with a plan forward. As Ellen mentioned, there are gap years, additional schooling, post-bac, retaking courses, and these are all things that instructors and coaches can definitely help you with, and obviously increase your chances of getting in by strengthening your application and providing that feedback along the way. All right, let's talk activity section. Ellen, I'm sure you've helped thousands of customers, users, pre-dents with this section. And I've actually, as we've ran this panel several times, there's a lot of questions around this, because some people feel like they might not have enough. They don't know what to count, how to make it stand out, how to write about their experience. And I think you would provide some great input here.
Yeah. So I'm heavily involved in the advisors community still, and the dental schools understand that. So a lot of you probably haven't accessed the ADSES application yet, but there's a pull down menu for your activities about how you want to categorize them. And not a lot of things fit well in all those categories. And please understand, schools don't care how you categorize these. That is kind of a little bit of a weakness of the application structure. They just want to hear about what you did. So if you said it was volunteer, but it was really community service, and none of that matters. Everything that you have done outside the classroom should find a place in there if it's taught you something. if it can go through any of the competencies for success of leadership, of community service, of working with others, of doing work just to earn money, right? It's important that you understand it's okay to have a job that might not at all be related to your professional school goals. But everything that you've done, including what you've done to just build yourself up, you're part of a book club, you play on a rugby team, you just different things that you do. Schools are looking at this area to see who this person is, right? How do they understand that they want to be a dentist? Well, that clinical experience goes in there. Because from an admissions point of view, if someone drops out in the first year, as director of admissions, I am getting the first call saying, we've now lost a semester or more worth of tuition in our budget. Why didn't you catch this, right? They didn't want to be a dentist. Why did you not know that when you interviewed them, right? So this understanding what you're getting into clinically is a big deal for schools to see that you know the rewards and the challenges. But also being someone who contributes to the community. I'm looking here to see who I'm bringing in to, right? Harsh is at Columbia. He's one of 75 people who are there as part of that class. I need to know that class is going to be a unit that survives together, right? Who cooks? Who is artistic? Who is the athlete who's going to pull people together for the volleyball league? I want to know that I have people who are going to get outside the classroom. This is not all they do. So anything that's been valuable to you, put in that area, because it's really valuable for schools to understand that.
Yeah, I think that's great, Ellen. You talked a lot about like what are dental schools looking for in candidates and how can you use this section to communicate that, even though they might not seem like completely relevant experiences in the moment. There are so many qualities, leadership, impact you can pull that will communicate why you'll be a good dentist and a good contributor to the dental school community. Harsh, if you're open to it, given you just went through the application process, would you like to speak to any of like the activities you wrote about and kind of how you communicated them so people can get a better idea of like how to even start?
Yeah, no, definitely. So, in terms of my activities, I kind of had, dipped my toes in like quite a different amount of extracurriculars and stuff like that. So, for example, when it came to writing for the activity section, let's say dental shadowing, for example. So I shadowed at 4 different clinics, and so one of them was a general dentist clinic. So at this clinic, the way that I kind of approached writing the actual description for that activity was first I described the setting of the clinic. So, I was a shadower under Dr. Blank, who was a general dentist. And then I went to describe 1 to 2 sentences about what I actually saw. So I saw various crown preps. I saw, doctors placing Invisalign. I saw doctors doing regular cleanings. So it was like very variable in terms of like what the actual description was. And then the last thing, which I think is the most important in each activity, is describe like what you learned and how you want to like apply that in the future. So I know at each of the different dental clinics that I kind of shadowed at, there was like a different emphasis. So I know at one dental clinic, it was a private clinic with a sole practice owner. And so I saw that emphasis on business and learning about the business side of dentistry. And another practice, I shadowed a peds doctor, and I saw the importance of like patience and, really understanding your population. And so different things like that integrated into your activities section, I think really shows admissions that you're not only just doing these activities just to do them, but you're actually really learning and, being an active member. Another thing that I suggest whenever it comes to activities, if you're a leader for a club, if you volunteer, definitely showcase your accomplishments. So for example, if I was a leader for a dental philanthropic club at my undergrad, and one of our main events was a hygiene drive that we did every year. So in my activities section, I definitely emphasized how much, I contributed to that hygiene drive and like that influence that we had. So we donated to over 200 people. We created 200 different kits. And we did this every single semester. So things like that definitely help each activity kind of stand out. And one other thing I will mention about that section is you're able to star 6 different activities. And so that's also important when considering like what's most important to you in terms of your activities. I will say one thing that was like super unique, I guess, not unique, but just different about my application. So I'm really big, I kind of said, I'm a big foodie. So I was very involved in Yelp throughout undergrad. So I became like a Yelp elite member. And I put that down as one of my activities as like an extracurricular. And I know like at like 3 different interviews, the interviewees were asking me about that specific activity. They were like, "Oh, we've never seen that before. Like, why? Like, what made you put that down?" And so it kind of sparked up a conversation. So I will say, when you're adding extracurriculars to your activities, think very broadly. Obviously, you can't just put down like something random, but definitely, think broadly when it comes to that.
And I have to chime in here because I have had a client who on the side liked to bake and liked it so much that she started a little business out of her kitchen with her mom for the community. And I really convinced her to lean hard into the baking because it would come up in the interviews. And I said, you're going to get the same hokey comment about, oh, I guess after exams, you'll be the one who makes the cakes. And she started texting me saying it happened again in the interview. They said it again. We talked about baking. So, I mean, whatever is unique about you, put that in there.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it creates a memorable experience, right? Like they're going to remember, oh, Harsh, the elite, like the Yelp elite member. In
Right.
addition to, obviously, you probably did things more relevant to dentistry or medicine or childcare or patient care, things like that. But gave something very sticky. So I think that's awesome. And as you mentioned, you can star 6. So lots of opportunity for you to highlight different parts of the experience. And also, to our earlier point about starting early, if you aren't like applying this year, or maybe you have a couple of years to spare, this is like one of the big ones you should be thinking about with 2 to 3 years left in the process is like, what are you involved in? What are you engaged in? Get involved in community service, be a well-rounded person, show impact. And that really, I think, is not something you can do overnight, but something that you can be intentional about as soon as possible. And then obviously follow go for it, Ellen.
Yeah, I just wanted, before we move on to the next thing, have you understand as an applicant, all of you, the reason why you're asked to star 6 things as your most important activities is to tell me what to zero in on, right? There could be endless, and I'm really, if I'm reviewing applications, I'm probably doing 50 or 75 of them that day. And I'm getting really tired of reading through and kind of like slogging through all these activities to see what was really important to you and what was meaningful. So the process now gives you a chance to put a spotlight on that. So you can bet I'm going to read those very carefully because you're telling me this is really what I want you to know. The other happened and it was good, but this is kind of who I am. So don't feel that you have to game the situation there and be like, oh, well, one research and one clinical and one whatever. Really tell them what's been important to you because that rounds you out as a person.
I love it. Yeah, thanks so much. Okay, we're going to jump to the next one. And Harsh did talk about this at the beginning. He talked about asking early, being direct in your ask. There's so much to dive into here. So Harsh, given that you referenced this, let's start with you. What makes a seller personal, or oh my gosh, did I just jump? We're going to start on the personal statement. It went forward and then now I'm back. So personal statement. Let's start on this one. Ellen, I'm going to pass this one to you first because you actually did talk about this in your intro, and then the next one should be on the letters of rec. Harsh. Sorry, I moved my keys forward and then I moved it back, and I got messed up here. So take it away, Ellen.
I am obsessed with helping people with their personal statements because a personal statement that is poorly written really won't hurt you, right? No one's going to be like, oh, she's not good at writing. But a personal statement that is well written can really propel you. And for me, it's grabbing people at the beginning with a very kind of tight, well-organized first paragraph that tells me what's coming next. If you're meandering on and telling me all about your grandpa and his dentures and the difficulty of Thanksgiving dinner, I'm reading it. I'm a dentist or I work at a dental school. I understand that that's what happens. I need to get to the part about you. So it needs to be very, very well reviewed by people who know what they're doing and contain a lot of information about yourself. People, again, get very nervous that, well, there's nothing unique and special about my preparation. But there is, because it's your preparation and it's convinced you that you want to do this. So just tell me about it. And if it rings authentic, that's great. But also don't edit things out yourself and say, oh, well, nobody cares that I minored in English. I would love to hear that you minored in English. Tell me why. Tell me about your interest in that. People who work are in the theater, right? You pick up on cues. You understand people's motivations just from your interest in being on stage and acting. And so you're maybe going to be able to relate to your patients a little bit better. there's value in everything you do. So don't edit these things out, but make sure they're about you and not meandering and telling me someone else's story.
Ellen, to double click, how do you recommend people start? Like, let's say you're working with a client. I know you've worked with hundreds of Leland clients on this. It's time to crack it. Do you kind of have a process you work with them to brainstorm or like start the draft? Because I know that often is the most daunting part, getting started.
Right. If you don't like what I'm going to say, you're not going to like working with me, because what I tell them to do is everybody has an idea in their head. Harsh, I'm sure you did. You're like, I have these 10 different things I can write about. I don't know what to do. I want you to give me 10,000 characters, write it all, put all of it on paper, go on for 10 pages with each section. I always think about this and write up this story and this story and this story. And from that, we will find your thread and cut it down probably within 3 drafts, if that. But if you get it all from your head onto the page, then I can work with people about this part I understand is important to you, but kind of doesn't matter to admissions committee. So let's reduce that, right? But let's blow this part up because this is really impressive and you're not giving yourself enough credit here. And we go from there.
Awesome. I'm actually just talking to you about this now, Ellen, and I think we should schedule out your personal statement workshop that you put on and get people into that event as well, because I know it's a lot deeper into the topic than we're able to cover tonight. One other follow-up question before we dive over to the highly anticipated letters of rec question that I teased. How do you think about the complement between activity section and personal statement? Because I think often people probably feel like they want to repeat a lot that they've already said. How do you advise on that, Ellen?
The personal statement should not be a repeat of activities, just kind of like name, date, what I did, name, date, what I did. You do have to kind of find the story you want to tell about yourself. And people sometimes forget that work and activities is going to be there. Whoever's reading the personal statement will also be looking over the work and activities. So we want to tie in what's important, but anything left out of the personal statement is not left out of your application. This is just, one page that you have, really. It's 4,300 characters, one page to talk about yourself. It's your only voice till you get to the interview. So you want to really kind of talk about your motivations and what's brought you to this point, and anything that you may be really proud of. It's a good place for it.
I think that's awesome. I think it should be a compliment. It should not compete.
Right.
It should not repeat, but instead showcase, like, yeah, who are you? Yeah, you can list out your resume. You can list out your grades, your scores, your transcripts, but this is your time to actually showcase how you think about things, what matters to you, all of that. Let's pass it to the next one. Harsh, how did you think about the importance of letters and of recommendation in the application process?
Yeah, so I think this is very, very integral in the process too, just because letters of rec also kind of help, demonstrate not only your academic prowess, but also how well you are getting to know professors and how your relationships are with like your mentors. Whether that be a professor or a dentist, I think it's super important to, get involved, whether that be through office hours, through, like Ellen was saying, sitting in the front of the class. What I kind of did was I ended up doing research for my general chemistry professor, and then I was a TA for both of my orgo professors. So I asked those 3 for my letters of rec. And I know there's some schools, for example, like Columbia, that require 3 science professors. And so that kind of ended up just working out that way. And then I shadowed a dentist in Florida as well, and that is who I asked for my 4th letter of rec. And when I was asking for each of the letters of recommendation, I really started off getting to know my professors really well, like early on, just because they were, very easy to talk to, very great to talk to. So it wasn't, that kind of came naturally. But if it doesn't, I think getting involved through like office hours or just, asking questions about the subject or even describing your process, kind of where you are, like what your goals are in life. I think it helps develop that connection with a professor. And I think that's super important. And generally from what I've seen, most dentists are very, very open to writing letters of recommendation just because they've been in your shoes before. So don't be afraid to ask, your local dentist or whoever you've kind of shadowed, because they're very, very accepting with open arms. And I would definitely recommend at least like 3 to 4 months in advance asking for a letter of recommendation, Because I know a lot of professors, especially if it's at a bigger program, they have like a wait list for students. I know even at my undergrad, I went to a pretty small school. Some professors had like a cap, like I'm only going to write 15 letters of recommendation. After that, I will not be accepting any more requests. So definitely asking early on kind of helps with that as well.
Oh, sorry. If you have a question, drop it in the chat, just so we can make sure to monitor. Harsh, I think that's awesome feedback. And I think to Harsh's earlier point, like start early. There's two things that we can extract from this. Start early in terms of building the relationships. You can't show someone you care in a month. Like if you're early out, or take his advice to ask a professor to do research for them, or TA their class. These are all things you can be doing early on, and you still have some time for that. And then second is ask early, right? To his point, there are a lot of people that are probably coming to science professors. They are busy people. They have classes. They often have things outside of just teaching in your universities. And so being someone who comes early, comes prepared, comes with like we call it the recommendation prep doc, where we actually tell you to give them a list of things that they can write about and things to highlight just to make their lives easier. And those are the people that often get the best letters of rec. They've put in the time to build the genuine relationship, and they put in the time to help prepare the professor or the dentist or the person writing their letter of rec with enough time. Ellen, I'll have you speak to this one. I know we're almost at time, so let's do this one, and then I want to make sure we have time for our final ones. Take it away.
Secondaries are school specific, right? So you're applying broadly through the ad test. Somebody actually just asked that question in the chat. And a secondary says, okay, now tell me why you're interested in my school specifically. So you want to look at what that school's mission is. You want to look at the letter from the dean that's always on the website, how they describe themselves, what they look for in an applicant. They're telling you who they want you to be. So find a way to relate your own experiences through the question into the values they use to describe themselves, right? So if they're interested in people who work in the community and that's what they value, and putting their students out in the community and working with underserved, you want to highlight something you've done in that respect. And if any of you haven't done that yet, I would highly recommend you get out there and start giving your time to other people, because that's a huge part of admissions right now.
Amazing. Okay, we're going to jump to the next one. How can you stand out? We got a question about this in the chat. I'm going to pass it to Ellen and then Harsh, like a one line that you think those on the call should pay attention to as they think about defining their candidacy. And I think everyone obviously has a very beautiful and personal story. Everyone is interesting in their own ways. How do you help with this?
Everybody's interesting, so no one is interesting, so that's okay. People, the interesting aspect comes in the interview when you have a nice chat with somebody. A lot of the admissions process is very based on grades and DAT scores with your personal touches in there, but it's when you get in that personal interview and you're just connecting with someone, right? I really don't remember of the students I have interviewed or done even mock interviews with over the years, anyone who is that unique and they've done something that I just can't even wrap my brain around. You know, people have similar experiences that are bringing them to healthcare. So just be able to talk about it in a way that's very genuine and really touches on why it means a lot to you and why you want to be a part of healthcare.
Harsh, anything you'd add there?
Yeah, I would say this is a great question. I often found myself asking this too. I think everybody is unique in their own way. I think if you showcase kind of like what Ellen was saying, your passion through your interviews, that's going to be the best way, but also through your essays and through your activities. If you have some sort of synchronous, sorry, I can't say that word perfectly, but some sort of like synchronous, like, you know, way that your application is weaved together, it'll be very noticeable. And so definitely everybody consider that. Like you'll be unique in your own way. Just showcase your passion through your application.
I love it. All right. Any common mistakes, Ellen, that you've seen being on the admissions committee? You can do this rapid fire, but anything people should be aware of. I wrote down one that you said, which is in your personal statement, talk about yourself. Use I, your impact, not about other people. You can use other people to kind of set the stage, but any other common mistakes that are frequently getting in people's ways?
I just see a lot of people thinking that parts of what they've done to prepare, or I'm sorry, that hasn't been preparatory, but things that are a big part of their lives don't matter. If something is important to you and you spend time doing it, tell me about it. Don't edit things out, right? Don't take things out. Give the whole picture, especially when you're working on the personal statement, working on the AdSense application, working with a coach, an advisor, a friend, whatever. Don't take things out, because if it was just all about numbers, you would just send a transcript in and they would decide. They really want to know who you are. So kind of, do you bake, right? Are you a Yelp reviewer? Be unique, be interesting.
I love it. All right, final tip. Harsh and Ellen, bring us home.
What is your final tip? So final tip for standing out, think broadly. So think very broadly and think, all throughout your undergrad, kind of what you've done. You'd be surprised at how many students kind of forget, like, oh, like ballet was a big part of my life. And then I specifically tell them, throw that into your application. Like that shows your personality. I would say that would be my biggest tip, is think very broadly.
I would agree with that and build on it by saying, control the application calendar. Get things in as early as you can, because when the AdSense application opens up the first week of June, they submit to schools about 2.5 weeks later. Every single interview spot in the entire country is open at that point. So get yourself in there on the ground floor.
Okay, both of you, anything, I know it's only been an hour session, so we can't cover everything, but anything that's been left unsaid that you want people to walk away with tonight? Now's your time.
No one should think that they can't do this. If your grades or your DATs aren't where you want them to be, take some more classes. That shows resilience, and schools really respect that. And schools love a non-traditional applicant because you're bringing life experience and resilience to the table. So believe in yourself, and kind of it will happen for you.
Harsh, anything to add?
Yeah, no, I think that was perfectly said. I would just say your final tip, the application cycle is a long process. Take advantage of everything, that comes with it. I didn't realize, but interviews will be like the best time of that application cycle. I know a lot of schools are going back in person, so take advantage of just, getting acclimated, getting accustomed to like how dental school, like the vibe of the school is. I think that's going to be the most important part of that dental school process. So that'll help you pick your dental school better.
I love it. All right. Final word. Thank you. Work one-on-one with these coaches. You are all amazing. Elizabeth, I just saw your interview question come through. We've had tons. Actually, Harsh just hosted an interview question event pretty recently. It's on our YouTube channel. Go watch it. Thank you so much, Harsh and Ellen. Emma, if you don't mind dropping their profiles in the chat, you can work with these coaches. You can also, Ellen mentioned to me before that if you send her a message, she will give you a discount for one-on-one service. Reach out to them, chat with them, see how you can best work together. And then Emma, if you don't mind dropping the Leland sales call or kind of strategy call, you can talk to one of our team members to help you actually determine what the best path forward looks like. So thank you so much, both of you. Incredible job, incredible panelists. Schedule a sales call. I don't know why this looks kind of funky over here, but overall, it's been an incredible time tonight. We want to help you get into your dream dental school. When you all win, we win as a team. So we really are invested in you and hope that you got a ton of information tonight, and hope that we can continue being on this amazing journey with you for the rest of the application cycle and for years to come. Let's get you into your dream programs, and best of luck, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. And thanks again, Harsh and Ellen. It's been excellent.
Good luck, everyone.
Good
Bye
luck.
now.
Thank you, guys.